Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Activities for People Living at Home with Dementia. We are proud to offer this series with funding from the Area Agency on Aging and the United Way of Tarrant County. These programs are recorded and are made available for viewing through a YouTube channel for future use. I am your host for today's activities. Our topic today is brought to you by Peggy Spear with the Amon Carter Museum of American Art. She's going to show us Make It New. And I can't wait to see what this is all about. Peggy, take it
All
away.
right. Thank you for the setup, Martha. Here we go. So, Make It New. Right now, we reinstalled our galleries. Now I think it's been almost 2 years ago. And one of the galleries that our curator of the 20th century artworks titled was Make It New. And so it was this moment in American art, broader sense of art, dance and music and visual art, where artists were looking at existing things but in new ways. And so the poet, I'm sure you've heard of the poet Ezra Pound, coined the phrase "make it new." And so it was really the phrase that 20th century advocates used to embrace modernism. So Make It New manifested itself in very different ways. One of the major ones was basically it was representational was now obsolete. That was a thing of the past. Realism was a thing of the past. Let's think in abstract terms. So it was repurposing things that already existed in a way that was totally different. You know, we'll look at some artworks where that happened. Or it could have been looking back to past types of art making, but bringing it into the 20th century in a way that made more sense. Or it was creating brand new styles of art like Cubism, which I'm sure you've heard of that type of movement, Cubism. So we're going to look at 3 different artworks that all of them are sculptural, but it was not just sculptural art that was revolutionizing. It was all forms of artwork, photography, works on paper, oil on canvas, but we're just going to look right now at sculpture. So this is a pretty funky one. It's entitled Soap Bubble Set, Lunar Space Object. Can you tell me what we see?
Well, a lunar shot.
A wine glass.
A drinking glass, yep.
A pipe for a bubble, I guess.
Yeah, it's a clay bubble pipe.
And then the white bubble on top.
Yeah, it's a cork ball. That's actually what that is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it looks like a bubble.
And some kind of a chart.
Yes. There's a chart here. It's got numbers in columns.
And then there are 2 metal pipes going across with a ring around it.
Yes. Yep. And then you can't see it in this particular angle, but there's a seashell on the right side ball.
You can see a part of it, yes.
Yeah. The pipe is on the ground or on the bottom, and then there's a shell just barely touching or barely off of the opening of the pipe. So let's start working through this. We see the moon. We know the title is Lunar Space Object. Can we start assigning maybe some meaning to what we see? So bubble, someone, I think Steve pointed out the bubble pipe.
Yes.
What do bubbles look like as you start to blow them out?
They're kind of clear and rainbowy.
Clear, rainbowy. What shape are they?
Round.
Round.
It's almost like the ring is hanging there.
Yes. So they're all, if you start pulling it apart, the little bubbles could be little planets. The ring could be maybe Saturn's ring.
Okay.
Be another circular idea of a planet.
Mm-hmm.
But they all have that circular shape to it, which also not only could it mean be a planet, but it's also reinforcing the shape of, what do we see in the background?
The moon.
The moon.
The moon.
The moon. The same thing with that cork ball.
That white vertical line almost looks like bubbles in a fish tank.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it does.
So he would find, these are all objects that he found from his world. And those images, like that image of the moon, I think he removed from a textbook and then pasted it to the back of this kind of, it's like a diorama. It's actually called an assemblage.
Textbook.
Because these are all objects that existed and he put together to create a different meaning. So this is really thinking inside that idea of making it new. Objects that seem pretty different, not seeming to have any real connection to each other, are all now kind of given the umbrella of this idea of a lunar creation.
On the bottom left, is that a little person in the screen?
On the left
Next,
here.
On the
Bottom
left.
left.
Oh, left.
Next to the glass?
No. I think it's like glue and shadow and.
Okay, it
There's
almost
it's
looks like a
nothing-
little, almost looks like a little person.
I can
It
see what you're saying, like right here. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think it's just how it was assembled. There's no
Okay.
visual assignment to that.
Okay.
So I'm not sure what the wine glass means. Is it because it's bubbly champagne or something?
From my research, I couldn't find anything specific about why he included that drinking glass. So this, there are several in this. It's not a series, but it was something he was really, really fascinated with, this idea of the moon, of lunar, of solar. And so he created these soap bubble box sets. And this drinking glass appears in a few of them, but I can't find anything on how that necessarily ties to this greater idea of lunar.
Okay.
But so the pipe was something.
Well, flying it to the moon, I guess,
Yeah.
Bubbles fly you to the moon.
Right. Yeah, that idea. I think it is speaking to the bubbles. That's not a champagne flute, but it could be some sort of sparkling something that you might.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so the clay pipe, it blows bubbles, but this was also something that he was really enjoyed as a child. And as a child, he was very interested in space. So it's kind of a little biographical inclusion he has there. The seashell. Now, what do we think the seashell might have to do with the moon?
Maybe the ebb and flow.
Yeah, the tide.
The tide, yeah.
Exactly right. It's a nod to the power the moon has on the tides. So that's his little nod to the power of the moon there. Those parallel rods that Yetta pointed out, it could be speaking to that track, that the rotation of planets around the sun, while it doesn't veer from that path. And so if you were to tip that, the ball would actually move. So there's that idea of, if it does move, it's only moving in one direction, or it's only moving in one path. But there's a romanticism to there, a kind of a sweetness or a nostalgic feeling to this. It doesn't feel like a bunch of random things, kind of junky. It's created in a way that tells a kind of a romantic story about the sun, or our solar. And you can see, someone pointed out the numbers on the side. Those are annotations, star annotations.
Oh, okay.
So there's a very scientific inclusion to this, while there is this kind of romantic inclusion to this, the bubbles.
So,
One of the things that reminds me of romanticism is actually the frame. It's not a stark, in your face frame. It's more of a soft wooden frame.
Yeah,
And it kind of mellows it out to me.
You're right. That's a really good point, Steve. It sort of has that feel to something you might have had in your own home growing up. Maybe not the diorama itself, but you would have maybe something in that frame, that pine, or you found an old frame at an antique store or a vintage shop, or something that you're giving it another life. It definitely has that softness to it.
Could it represent, and this some just thought it, he's looking through the window. It's the window and you're looking out at the moon.
Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, very much.
Hey, I have a question, Peggy.
Mhm.
When this was done in 1959, the United States was just on the verge of a full-blown space program. Did that influence, do you think that influenced him any at all?
1000%. Yes. Yes, that is such a great point, Don. Yes, he was very interested in the space race, and it was right after World War II. So it was something that was, the country's on the up and up. This is giving us hope, for what was a sad decade before. So now this was something he was very, very interested in. And it was on a lot of people's minds. So there was that immediacy for a lot of people about, oh my gosh, the moon, we're trying to get ourselves to the moon. So there was a lot of topical relation to this, as well as maybe past emotional or scientific. It was a pretty layered piece. So we have, we have this program here, and I think I might have mentioned it before, but as just a refresher, we have every year we select 4 local artists that we work with. They're called Carter Community Artists, and they work with us in a variety of ways, teaching, doing programs. And that one of the things they do is we have them select one of their favorite pieces in our collection that inspires them, or their, kind of speaks to their practice of art making. And this year, one of our artists' name is Casey Short, and he was really drawn to this particular artwork because he does a lot of assemblage and sculptural works. And so I'm just going to read a couple of the lines of why he was drawn to this. He says, "I was drawn to Cornell's soap bubble set immediately because of the layered mixed media and conceptual weight behind the work. The objects inside, like the seashell metal ring and bubble pipe, speak to both art and artifact. The way in which this piece was created suggests that Cornell was making this work in its present time, but for the future." So while it was relevant to the space race, even now we still are fascinated by, we're in another space race now, really, but you're fascinated by solar or by lunar. So I have one more we have a video that one of our other educators is reflecting on. I apologize in advance if you can't hear the sound. I don't know what I'm doing to make it not have the sound, but there are closed captions. And it's just a 1-minute video of her reflecting on her experience with students in the galleries on this particular artwork.
I've had the good fortune as a gallery teacher to work with lots of students in our galleries. And one of the objects that almost always catches their attention is by Joseph Cornell, who was one of the earliest artists in the United States to use found objects, often from popular culture and often mass-produced in his work. Here, he equates planetary objects like the moon with soap bubbles through a clay pipe that a child might use to blow bubbles in the yard, and a cork ball and an image pulled from a children's book reference the moon. A seashell in the lower right-hand corner suggests the connection between the gravitational pull of the moon and the oceans. Students are always fascinated by Cornell's use of a text from a book, in French no less, on the back of the box. And you can look in the mirror on the display to see this detail. Cornell thought about his creations as magical and felt strongly about their capacity to transport himself and his viewers to worlds imagined.
So just another perspective, children always love looking at that one in the gallery. And just for reference, it's about 14 inches long by 10 inches high, 4 inches deep. So it's not big. It's about the size of a shoebox, but flat wise, but it's a pretty cool piece nonetheless. All right, so now totally different. but created in this idea, during this idea of Make It New, is this sculpture entitled Head Abstraction by a man named Robert Laurent. So again, it's really hard showing sculpture on screen because this particular piece is meant to be viewed in the round, which it's in a pedestal in the middle of the gallery, and you can walk around 360 to see it. The Cornell, the last one we looked at, is hanging on the wall. So that is meant to be viewed more two-dimensionally. This is truly meant to be viewed in the round. But it's called Head. So are we able to kind of start to place attributes to this?
Well, I think what part of the flowing part looks like it's probably hair.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm. It's easier to see the right picture that it's a head,
Yeah.
Right here.
because
Yeah.
you have the ear and the eye and the hand up in
Yes.
front of the
Yes.
face. Yes.
Oh, so you're seeing a hand over the face.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Okay.
I
Here
think
it looks like it might be a bun, some sort of, which, what are you feeling it's pulling towards one gender or another? Or do you think it's just a generic head? What are people feeling?
I see an elephant.
You see, okay, let's
Oh.
tell me about it, sister.
Elephant Man.
Yes, on the right side, about a third of the way down, there's an eye right where
Okay.
you are, and then this long nose right next to it.
Oh, okay.
It moves into the
Oh.
collar.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Well, I hate to break it to you, Martha. It's not an elephant,
That's okay.
but I love it.
Eye of the beholder.
Yes, exactly.
Isn't it?
So this is ahead of what he identified as a girl.
Ugly girl. Okay.
So he said, all right, so this particular artist, Laurent, was, and how to make, this is, I'm pulling it into the Make It New. What his technique was, is he would find wood in his backyard, at the beach, wherever, and he would directly carve right into the wood. And Martha and Don, a couple of weeks ago, we looked at what that flower form was, that tall flower. This is the same artist, and he's using that same method here.
Okay.
Where he's using a piece of mahogany wood. He has no sketching, planning, idea what he's going to carve into it before. He just starts going. And as he goes, his hand, it's all intuition. His hand leads him through the grain of the wood. And this is what he ended up with.
Okay.
He had no idea that it was going to be the head of a girl. And so this particular type of method, it's called direct carving, he's the first American, he's assigned as one of the first American and the best known American to employ this method in carving. It had been done, Michelangelo used to do this out of stone, but it hadn't been done in a long time. It hadn't been done in the US. And so he brought it to the 20th century, but he was not doing it in a classical form. He was using this 20th century of Make It New abstraction in what has been often a past technique that was very traditional. So he says about this specific piece, it turned out abstract. I didn't mean it to be. It was a head of a girl. I saw shapes and I followed them.
Kind of like some of my wood carvings, you wouldn't recognize what they are
Yeah.
from what
Yeah.
I intended them to be. Yeah.
And
From my
did you just
paint-
kind of go where your hand went, or did you?
It's
Start
yeah,
off-
whatever cut, whatever the cut was, that's kind of in some of it. And I thought I had what I might mind, but my hand didn't go that way.
Uh-huh.
And Don?
No, I was just going to say, I have the same kind of different media, but sometimes what I start painting is not what I entirely started to think it was.
Cool.
So some of it,
And that's such a happy accident when those happen.
yeah, it is.
But he really embraced it, and he really was well known for it. And so he was working in a ring of other, he was an immigrant to the United States, and he spent a lot of time in France, and then he was back in the US. And so he was very influenced by abstract art. And it was in vogue at the time when he was carving this During the 20s, realism came back because of the Depression. It was just anything abstract just felt too elitist. After the Depression, abstraction came back. So that last one we saw, was after it was almost 1960. Abstract was back in vogue. This was before the Depression. Abstract was in vogue, and so it was again this exploring of a old technique, but making it a new technique to artists of the day.
Hey Peggy, how big is it?
It is 15 inches high, 8 inches wide, 6 inches deep. It's not big. It's a tabletop type of thing.
But it's still a good chunk of wood.
Yeah, it is.
You
And it's
started that.
mahogany. Mahogany is very hardwood.
It is
Yeah.
a hardwood,
So
yes.
And the folds, that was something that kind of came as he was surprised to see these folds coming. He talks about, so it was just as much as a surprise to him as it was to everybody else. And he was a magnificent carver, carved dressers, carved his own headboard, and then was folk art was something that was inspired by. So people who did not have formal training but were carving, into wood, wooden toys, rocking horses, things like that. Those are things he collected. So it showed itself in his art this way. Do people like this type of abstract sculpture?
I
It's
like this.
It's a little too abstract for my taste.
Janine, what about you? I know you're our abstract queen.
And Janine, you're on mute.
She might just be enjoying by listening today.
Or she might be asleep.
It depends upon this perspective. The one on the left is more pleasing to me than the one on the right.
See, and I like the right one better because I see
Yeah.
the half face and the excuse me, the hair flowing down,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and then the head sort of sealed in.
Yeah. When you walk into the gallery space, you are addressed by the front, what is to be the actual face of the girl. That's what looks at you first when you approach that sculpture. But it's meant to be viewed all around. So, all right, we got one more. Oh, and this is the bottom of it, which I just think it's kind of interesting when you get to see the sides of a sculpture that you don't get to see. So this is just kind of, it's sort of like a passport, different galleries. It's been,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Me too.
All right. So some of you have seen this with me before. Some of you might be seeing it for the first time, but Louise Nevelson is just so dang cool. And this artwork is just the neatest. So we're going to look at it again because it was really, she was so impactful in ABEX.
Peggy, I'm going to have to leave.
Bye, Steve.
Thank you, folks.
you next
Everybody,
week.
we'll see you tomorrow.
See you later. Thanks,
Bye.
Steve.
But this particular artwork it's made almost the same exact time as our lunar bubble box, and it's got another moon theme. It's called Lunar Landscape. So what jumps out at you first?
I don't really see a lunar landscape there.
I
No,
don't.
okay. What did you say, Yetta?
I don't see a landscape either, a lunar landscape.
Oh, fair enough.
It looks like a clockwork, the inside of a clockwork.
Oh my goodness. Yes, you're right. It totally does. And it's got that verticality too. It's really tall. It's 86 inches tall. So it's taller than me. And it's about 50 inches wide about. So it's got a massive presence in the gallery.
Wow.
That's 7 feet plus.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
Wow.
And she was she's big feminist and she was the one that made it so the stereotype that only men could make monumental sculpture were the ones doing it. She said, not on my watch. And then she started making these amazing, massive sculptures. But what was really cool, she's a New Yorker. She was I believe she immigrated to the United States and from Russia. And she created these, they're called assemblages, sort of like Cornell's, from found objects in New York City. She'd walk around and go through piles of trash to find what she wanted to use. And so you can see here, you see a juggling pin at the very top.
Yeah.
You can see the seat of a chair
Wow.
right here. There's a bedpost tucked in this little cubby. So she'd walk around this, you can see this is like a broken crate.
Bedpost, there's a spoon, a wooden spoon.
You can see all sorts of odds and ends that
Yeah.
she would just walk around New York. One man's junk is another man's treasure, and she would bring it back to her studio. And so she would create these sculptures, and she would put them in this particular phase of her career. She was putting them in these loft boxes to create almost the effect of cubism that was in vogue earlier in the century, creating that cubism, but through sculpture, by actually putting things in cubes. So the lunar landscape, this is where she converts it to a lunar landscape. All of these you can imagine were different colors, different types of wood, the juggling pin might have even been painted. Who knows what type of wood that seat chair is? Maybe a mahogany bedpost, who knows? Well, she flattened the surface by painting everything one color. And in this instance, it's black. So it was often black, white, or gold was usually the palette she was working in. And she painted it all black to create the feel of the look of the moon. And then called it lunar landscape because all of these different boxes and ups and downs created what she felt would have been the ups and downs of meteor on the moon.
Oh, the surface.
On the surface.
On
On the
Okay.
surface of the moon. So that's where she got that title from. And when she would display these in gallery, which it's not displayed here this way, but when she was, working with different galleries out of New York, she would have them dramatically lit and black light lit to create almost like an immersive experience with the viewer and that space, to make you feel as if you are actually on a lunar surface.
If this would have been painted during the time where we actually were landing things on the moon, even before the people, Neil Armstrong went to the moon, I could see how this would be a mixture of machine and the surface of the moon.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
So I see down at the bottom right-hand corner,
Mhm.
that to me would look like a person flying an aircraft or a rocket. A rocket. Yeah,
Like a spaceship or something.
spaceship. Yeah.
She doesn't speak directly to anything like that, or anything with the space race or rockets or anything like that. She was really focused on nature, the experience of nature. So in this particular case, it's just the lunar surface. That was like, she was so interested in recreating natural phenomena that this is what she was really interested in, and less about the mechanics of what was going on in the world at that time.
Yeah, I think some aspects of it could clearly be things on the moon in an abstract way. I mean, this panel, this part right here. Oh, you can't see where I'm pointing. The big box on the left.
Okay.
That looks like it'd be. Oh no, not that one. The next one over.
The one with the shovel?
Yeah, that looks like it could be something from a lunar landscape. I can see that.
It's dimensional.
Yeah, I think the familiar shapes of these circles add a little bit of that craterness that she might be trying to speak to. But then these dark shadows and high peaks, also, created by this stool seat that, is coming out at us, add to that maybe terrainy feel that we've seen pictures of the moon, or when they're driving their buggies on the moon. It's
Yeah,
that. But also too, I mean, if you were to imagine yourself, it would feel totally different if she painted it red and white,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, you'd get a totally different vibe. Or if
Yeah.
she painted it all white, that wouldn't feel as lunar, maybe, as her painting it all black. So,
maybe this is
go ahead.
maybe this is the dark side of the moon.
Ooh, or the unknown.
It could be.
The,
But so this was
The shadow of the moon.
shadow. And she was really interested in other themes in nature like this. So it could just be, you know, all of it was fascinating to her. And she
Okay.
eventually started creating, this is all wood. She then began experimenting later in her career with sheet metal and aluminum, which allowed her to move these types of sculptures from indoor spaces to outdoor spaces, which again, female sculptors were not doing that. So it was really groundbreaking for her to kind of hang with the big dog guys that were doing these types of things.
So did she have patrons that were supporting her to do these kind of things?
I'm not, you know, she had galleries in New York, and she was well known while she was alive, and museums were exhibiting her work as well as galleries while she was alive. So she did have a following, and and now most American art museums, any museum that collects American art, has maybe not one of these massive sculptures, because this is like a real masterpiece, but has pieces of hers, because, you know, she's such an iconic artist now in the American canon of art. And she was a cool, funky character. She wear big fur coats walking around New York, and coal black hair, and would wear cool scarves in her hair. I mean, she really fit the bill for an avant-garde artist. And so her work paved the way for a lot of other female abstract artists, because she was such an icon.
Hey, Peggy.
Yeah.
One more thing about all of these.
Mhm.
I noticed that there's usually on the paintings and the photographs, there's some sort of note about where they were collected from, who donated them to the museum. I don't know how that works.
These did not have any specification in collection. So they were probably just acquired through our acquisitions committee.
Okay.
If they were gifted to us, and the gifter wanted it known, we would have to put gift from, or it would be if it were spent from a certain type of money that requires a call out, that would be there too. So if you don't see it, then there was no real restriction on how that money needed to be spent or whatever. So so these are all just part of our permanent collection.
Yeah.
And all of these are on view right now. And as long as I've been here, they've been on view. So these aren't going away anytime soon. That's kind of the niceness of some sculptures. They tend to stay out much longer than anything else. So if ever you happen to be in our galleries, you will find them all within arm's reach of each other in the same gallery.
Well, I mean, I'd be pretty impressed if I went in and saw this particular one staying there. I'd have to look at it for a long time, because it'd have a bigger scale, I think.
It's huge. And I created a couple of years ago for, sometimes we have it when we're in a touch environment, so pre-COVID. We have a cart that we roll out, and I spray painted a bunch of black blocks. So you can build, next to this artwork, you can try to build your own sculpture. We've got popsicle sticks and all these other random wood pieces that you can try your hand at creating your own version of a lunar landscape.
Is this a piece that has a backside to it, or you have to watch it this way?
It is backed up against the wall. There's no, this particular artwork is not meant to be viewed in the round. And a lot of her sculptures like this were designed to be flat up against a wall. Yeah.
I will say that this one box on the right side that has the chair seat in it. That really looks like an evil eye looking at me. So
doesn't it?
Yeah. eyebrow and an eyeball.
Ooh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's giving you the side eye. Some
More
bad
like an
dental work
owl.
right here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Woo, sorry.
That's
Changing
okay.
things. Yeah, this is a fun piece, and I know we've looked at it before, but it's one of those pieces that every time you look at it, you have a different experience with it.
Exactly.
So, all right, friends. Well, this is where I leave you. Next week is we're doing medical, so we're going to look at different artworks we have in our collection that are a nod to our people in the medical profession. Which you know, this last year, if we didn't give them a nod, I don't know what year we would ever need to give them a nod. This has just been amazing for our country. So we will spend a little time with those in our collection.
Peggy,
All right,
thank you
friends.
very
Right.
much.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you, Peggy.
Bye, y'all. Be good. I'll
Thank
see
you.
next
Have a
week.
good week.
You too. See ya.
Yeah, bye.
Wow, poof.
Oof.
So is Woodstock having trouble seeing the screen?
Yeah.
Looking through
It needs a magnifier.
magnifier
He's
glass.
playing with it and I don't want to take it down because he's having too much fun. Yeah, I think he was having a little trouble with the screen.
Bye-bye, Nancy.
Nancy, poof, she goes away at 11 too, I guess.
Yep.
Well, I tell you what, let's move right on into Fifth Street Cafe.